Hey, good evening. Welcome, everyone. This is Odin making another video of drawing and chatting, whatever I'm doing, just talking shit. Um, so, yeah, still working on this piece. So, most of this got done or drawn last night on 80's Made Consumers stream, which was really awesome. And I want to say once again, thank you, dude. Let me be on your show and draw and talk, you know, random fan type stuff, like we talk about movies, comics, all that, but also, promote what I'm doing here. And I really do appreciate it. I was on there with, of course, J-Bot, who is doing some tremendous stuff. He's really refining his chops, he says, but I think you're ready. Just go do it. His composition on some of those pieces was beautiful, and I think if you've got good composition, it's time to just start making sequential art and like using that composition in each panel and following a story. I think you'll do fine, man. So it was really awesome to do that with him, and an 80's Made Consumer has been really awesome to me. He asked me when I'm gonna actually start streaming on this channel, and I'm like, I don't know. And part of it is like, there's so many channels streaming. Like, you try to, and everybody in the fandom, you're going against someone else basically. And he had Chris on there. I can't remember Chris's name, but his book was Infinitale. I always get that wrong. Got to pronounce it just right. Infinitale. I believe that I'm pronouncing that right. Which is an amazing looking book. Everything he did. So he was on the stream too, and man, he made such an immersive universe, and he had maps and languages and history of all the different cultures of the different races and whatnot in his world. It was very Tolkien like that, and he even mentioned, that was his inspiration. And I think that's awesome. But it was awesome to see that everybody goes, oh, it would be cool as if you had a map. And he goes, well, I got a map, And he would tell about the races and what languages they speak. But anyway, as far as the streaming thing, 80's Made asked him, what are you streaming on your channel? And he's like, nope. I just go on other people's, and I kind of like that for myself too. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to ever being on somebody's. I gotta figure out my mic situation. It sounds fine when I record, and then when I stream, it's just not the best. So I don't know if it's the mic, the placement, what, but yeah. Outside of that, though, it was cool to, let people know what I was working on and hear the feedback. Everybody that said they really liked the art and whatnot. I mean, I really appreciate that. Means a lot to me, of course. So yeah, I don't know if I'm ever going to start streaming. I make these videos so I have content on here, and also people can see me drawing. So that way when they visit my channel, they can actually see something, But I don't know if I ever will, now that I think about it. I mean, I probably will, but I don't know if I'll become like a regular streamer and like go that approach. Because there's already so many good streams out there that I've really enjoyed, and just having them make their shows big and then just have creators and whatnot as guests, I think that's cool too. So, but that said, I did like a lot of this on a show last night, and then oh man, now I'm blanking on his name. Was it Drew? There's Darren came in later. Wagner, I think, and that guy was a trip, man. He was hilarious, like a can of freaking energy. It was funny. And by the way, I hope your foot heals up fine. But that was later in the night, man. I mean, it was a long stream, and we had a blast. But I was just drawing for the most part and just enjoying the banter. Everyone just going off, and the subjects moved from one thing to another. Very, very good pace. Yeah, 80s Maid's show is fun. It's unique, but it's all the things we like to talk about. All of us who are around the same age, liking the same shit. So, and as per usual, I got my Boilermaker at hand. So I just got back from softball, and we always play double headers. So I'm a little tired, but we kicked ass. Beat them both games. Wiped the floor with them both games. Just beat the snot out of them, and that's always. I mean, you kind of want a competitive game. And I felt bad because their talent level was just not on par, and I think they're gonna have a rough season. But so I was like, well, we better, mop the floor with these guys. They're not on our level. So yeah, that was fun, and but now I'm a little sore because when you're winning, you're getting up to bat a lot. We're just going through the lineup a lot, so I'm running a lot, getting on base a lot. It was fun. So yeah, this piece we were working on a lot, and I was just in this like mode. So like a lot of this stuff, I looked at it the next morning, like, man, you were drawing like sloppy. Like I just wanted to keep drawing so people would see stuff, but I'm like, ooh. So I really am coming back in and tightening up a lot of the line work because I've talked about it. Like my style is like pretty free when I'm inking. But I looked at it this morning. Even by my standards, this was a little loosey. And sometimes it looks fine from afar, but I'll see it close. I'm like, oh man, tighten that shit up. So that's what I'm doing mostly. But it's nearly done, so I got a lot done. It's just it was a little sloppy, so I just go in and highlight the areas that need it and make it look better, a little more crisp. So yeah. That said, I'm just getting into this world. So, is it Darren Wagner? He was talking about the crack pack, and I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. It was hilarious though, because they talk about smoking crack, which is funny as shit. Like, how is that not funny? I'm a Norm Macdonald fan. Like, every joke was about crack and crack whores. And, yeah. So why not? And then, obviously, there's Lord Crackhead, and he was talking a lot about my artwork, which, again, it's really flattering. It's always nice to, like, hear that people, like, think that you're doing a good job, because forever I've been drawing. And again, this is all new world to me, like meeting all these people and finding out about different streams, and it's nice. And again, I owe a lot of that to 80s Made. I was a fly on the wall for a long time, just watching streams because I love them, but I would never talk. I was just like, sometimes I would read the chat, but I was more interested in what the artist or person hosting were saying and their whole thing. So and then I started like conversing in the chat and just talking shit with people, but I'm not the best at it. And sometimes the host will read what I say and they'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, for one, sometimes it's like later. They get to it later and it's like, the joke would have worked, or what I said would have worked if you would have read it 5 minutes ago or whatever. But even then, sometimes, like, not being in person, and even being in person, sometimes what I say, like, just falls short because you go, yeah, it's just how I am. Sometimes my humor doesn't always click with people. It's really bad when we're talking text conversations and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm like, I was trying to make a joke. Don't take it the wrong way, but obviously it fell flat, where you have to explain it and you're like, well, it's already lost now. Just forget it. So that's the thing about these streams. You're like, well, it is all text when you're just in the chat. But that said, this is a interesting time and an interesting community. It's unprecedented. It's like nothing before. in the comic book world. But just in the fandom world in general, it's kind of been building towards this, but I think now it's kind of at its peak culmination, and it's interesting to see what would come next too, as these things evolve all the time. Um, but yeah, it's been a fun journey. So I just wanted to tighten up some on this before I went to bed, and I'm probably going to go to bed early tonight because, you know, I'm all tired from softball, and I was up late on the stream. I didn't stay up the full time, but, um, you know, on tomorrow I have to get up early because I have a full-time job that I have to be there at a certain time, and it's pretty early. So yeah, like I'll stay up on Saturdays, and yeah, anytime 80s Maid wants me to be a part, I'll be a part of that. Saturday nights. It might be a little harder when I have my daughters because they're not like little kids, so we like to stay up late. So, but he goes late, even though he's on the East Coast, or not the East Coast, but Pacific or Eastern time. So he goes pretty late, and I'm like, well, you know, after my girls go to bed, but you know they get up early too, and so that's the thing. But when I don't have my daughters, like this last weekend, yeah, I'm always down. But weekdays are hard, you know. My job keeps me in check. But I've always told people that I do good with a 9 to 5 kind of like job, you know, like it keeps me on a path. Like when I don't have that, or if I'm left to my own devices, man, I can get screwy pretty fast. I've been there before, too many times in my life where, uh, so like having that 9 to 5 job is sometimes my saving grace, you know. Yeah, I'm drawing a centipede monster here, and this guy is fun to draw. I'll tell you that. So you can kind of see that. I don't know, it's pencil down here, but crawling over this giant back hump thing of the tentacled baby doll that, again, if you don't know, you will if you get the book, you know, and we're getting there. So that was another question kept getting asked, you know, like when will it be available? And I'm, you know, it's one of those things, like I really have to start thinking about this a little stronger. But I want to have all my ducks in a row, and I've talked about this many times, like I don't want to come out of the gates, stumble like an idiot, and then especially first impressions on something, you know, you can't get that back. So I really want this to come roaring out of the gates, even if it's not the most amazing thing in the world. You know, the most important thing is that there's nothing that's damaging your reputation, you know. Because again, first impressions you can't get back. Phil saying that's the thing about first impressions. You only get one. Yes, I only get one. So we lost another comic book art legend. Now George Perez, I'd say, is just a tier down, but just barely from Neil Adams. I think what Neil Adams did as far as creator rights and things like that, I mean, it's hard to quantify. And then I think Neil Adams actually changed the art game in a whole way, like how people were drawing, what was acceptable, you know, almost like a Kirby of his time, you know. But that said, George Perez, I mean, some of his images are like some of the most iconic images you can think of. George Perez may have drawn them, and he's worked on so many different books. I have like a really weird old Teen Titans book, and saw that he did the art on it. And I'm like, what, really? I did not know that, you know. Yeah, George Perez or Perez. Sometimes you gotta pronounce it correctly to be a true fan, right? Yeah, rest in peace, both him and Neil Adams. Um, just the amount of power somebody that, and I don't mean power like the kind you wield, just power in like being good at your trade and kicking ass at it for so long that those guys had and represented. And I mean, drawing till the day they died. I remember watching streams of Neil Adams on Facebook, and he would just sit there and draw and talk. And it was kind of old manish. He would be kind of like, I'm working on this, and then maybe I'm working on that. But he just had all his faculties. He wasn't like senile. It was just funny because it's old man technology and everything, which I'm not that far behind, I'm sure. I do remember George Perez. Actually, both of them had cameos or appearances, not really cameos, on the Comic Book Men show, Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash. And yeah, just so much respect for, you know, in the field, like, you know, they're just comic book artists. So I'm not a big celebrity worship type person. So people make these big deals and these big memorials to like some actor or musician or something that died. And I'm like, yeah, it was a big part of my life, like listening to their music and watching their movies for sure. But that said, you know, that, you know, we should celebrate like war heroes and sacrificial people who are laid down their lives in some hardcore situation. Like, that's the people we really should celebrate. Nothing against celebrating that, but I think they get so much attention, and you're like, well, you know, we appreciate them for what they did, but you know, I hesitate to call him like a hero. Now, Neil Adams, especially for like the creator rights and what he did for Siegel and Schuster, you know, it really like forcing the issue on that and taking the mantle, or taking the situation as a burden to himself to like make sure that they got what they were due, you know, was cool. Not everybody does that, or not everybody would step up in that way. So again, maybe not like quite a hero, but an important figure. And yeah, I will say that I remember when I first started getting into comics, there was this kind of separation between the old artists and the new ones that I loved. You know, so I was such an Image homer because that's what I was all about at that time. Like, before Image even happened, most of those artists, 90% of them, I was watching and reading their stuff beforehand and was a fanboy. You know, like, I was like Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane. Like, I knew all their titles. Those were the ones I was buying regularly. You know, there was lots of titles coming out, but those were the superstars. Everyone knew it. So I wouldn't say like any kind of like angst or like lack of respect or whatever for the old guys. I just didn't get it because the guys I liked were all drawing a certain way. And then, so I remember Continuity Comics was really trying to like set their mark too. You know, like Image opened the door for the idea of someone besides the big two. You know, and there was Dark Horse, there was some other ones, but I remember Continuity, it was a big thing. They got Neil Adams in their bullpen working on something. And I remember the first Image I saw, I'm like, I didn't like it. For whatever reason, I didn't know much about him. So anyway, time goes on. And then I start seeing all this iconic imagery of, you know, the old characters. And from Marvel and DC. Especially DC, but I would see that name on there. And then I went, man, this guy did some iconic, badass imagery. And then when you put it together, like knowing the history and where it was when he started that kind of style, yeah, that was it was game changing. I mean, the the intensity that he was drawing with was new, and it became kind of the standard for a while, like when I was reading. But to know the history and how we got from A to B, you know, and going like, yes, Neil Adams, you are the man. And, you know, it took a little bit for me to understand that. But once I got it, I went, yeah, this guy's truly a legend in the field. Um, you know, it was the same thing with me and Kirby. I'm not going to lie. So all the Image guys, it was right around the time, right before Kirby died. And I remember when he did die, it was right at that time. But they were always talking about Jack Kirby. And I'm like, I remember, like, his imagery was so iconic. I remember pictures that he drew. But I remember as a kid, like, making fun of some of it. And now I'm like, oh man, you're such an idiot. You know, like, how could you make fun of, like, one of the greatest of all time? And now I can see the genius behind it. But at the time, like, he would do this exaggerated foreshortening thing. So I'm going to hold my hand out to the, you know, see how big my hand gets at the camera? He would do that. It would look really intense, but sometimes it'd be kind of off to the side. So the more I move my hand, you can't see. The more I move my hand to the side, the less foreshortened it is. It's not quite as big. It's really got to be right in front of to get the full foreshortening. And so sometimes it just looked like this big floating hand attached to, you know, a weird arm. And so I kind of made fun of it back then, not realizing that that was what changed comic books. Like, adding that intensity, that foreshortening, that action poses that he would do that became so Kirby-esque, you know. And you know, as a kid I didn't know any better, and now I'm like, oh, you're such an idiot. Bless your heart, you moron. You didn't know any better. But once I figured it out, yeah. And you start learning the history and, like, where comic art was before him, and how much his style, like, made comic books what they are and where they arrived. Now, I will say that, especially in mainstream comics, they have taken a turn for the worse in the art, because a lot of it's clean and crisp and tells the story well, which is good, but there's no excitement to it. Like, that was the thing. That's what he brought. It wasn't as much to, like, have perfect anatomy or have things look realistic. The whole point was it's not realistic. Why would you want to make it realistic? And I'm sure Jack Kirby took his time and wanted to. He could draw, like, a perfect, you know, portrait of someone, like a human, and make them look like a real human. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to make comic books, which are excitement. And he brought that. And Stan Lee knew it. And I know they had their kind of, like, issues and stuff. But I did hear an interview where they were both on the phone at the same time while they had their falling out. And they kind of made up. And Stan's in there like, well, Jack, I think you're one of the best artists I've ever known. What you brought to the table, yeah. And he was like, thank you, Stan, you know. And it sounded like they were making up, but then no reunion ever happened. But yeah, what a legend. And like I said, we lost him. And it's just the nature of it. Over time, you know, the ones that are gonna hit me a little harder for sure is when the guy's just 10 years older than me. You know, the 10, 15 years older is the Jim Lees, Todd McFarlane's. You know, once I hear about those guys passing, that's when I'm gonna be like, oh man. For one, it brings my own mortality to bear. I'm like, they're only like 10 years older than me. McFarlane was a little older. But the other side of that is going to be, we'll never get new art from this person. And that's the the end result. We're never going to get new Jack Kirby art. That's been a reality for a long time, but we're never going to get new Neil Adams art. We're never going to get new George Perez art. But it's bound to happen. It happens in music. You know, I love music. I'm a huge music fan. And, there was a past couple years where it was just like dominoes, like some of these living legends in the music world. I know it was like David Bowie and then Lemmy, and it was like these guys were, you didn't think they could die. I never thought Lemmy could die, but I didn't think David Bowie would die at this age. I thought he had some more fuel in the tank, but it happens. It happens to everybody. We're all gonna face that lonesome valley and be reminded of our actual mortality. But that makes living now so much more important. So yeah, I want to clean this up. I'm pretty close. Like, finish this part. There's some work up here I got to do. I gotta finish. You can't see it. Her hind tentacles. Her hind hocks and hind tentacles. And then just add a little background. It's supposedly just going to be the element of tile on the floor like I did over here. And then here I may just get rid of that. Depends on how it all looks, again, compositionally. There is some space here. But again, if I need area for text, that'll work fine. So I'm like, do I put in the background? Do I put in some speed lines? Could be anything. This is one thing, and anyone who looks at my drawings will figure out I don't like drawing backgrounds. I like drawing characters. I like drawing people, monsters, that kind of thing. And so, like, drawing backgrounds, sometimes I'm just like, do I have to? And as long as that's kind of the one rule. As long as you establish the background and where the characters are at, you don't necessarily have to draw them after that. But sometimes it's really advantageous to keep the background, or it'll make the piece, the image or the panel look proper. But sometimes you go, well, or do we just put speed lines? I mean, there's enough action in this that speed lines might be appropriate. But it's like all the time I'm spend maybe adding some really awesome speed lines. Maybe I just draw the background, because there's no background. It's really just making tiles on the floor in perspective. But I drew this without setting a vanishing point and things like that. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's really important to do that, and other times you can really fake it, as long as you know approximately where those things are. But anyway, like I said, I'm tired. Softball kicked my ass, even though we beat the snot out of these guys. Just destroyed them. And I go in there like Conan. We gotta crush our enemies, see them driven before us, and hear the lamentation of their women. So it's co-ed softball, so we actually hear their women lamentate. That was the funniest meme on Twitter today. It was Conan goes to college to become a biologist, so he knows whose lamentations he's hearing, or something like that. That was gold. The I don't know, I'm not a biologist thing is obviously gonna create a million memes, and that one was great. So anyway, it's something I see that I want to fix. But before that, I'm going to say goodnight. I'm going to say thank you all. Everybody should check out 80s Made Consumer, JBot Art. I can't remember Chris's name, but his book is Infinitile. And then pretty sure it was Drew, and his page was... Hold on one sec. I can look it up. Give me just a second. I feel bad not knowing what his name was. I was just on a stream with him like most of the night. Let's see. Why am I not finding it? He was very insightful. He had some good insights on a lot of things. And then he also has a book that's going to come out. You know, maybe a year or so before it actually does. But he showed some of the artwork and talked about the story. Again, that would be on 80s Made's last live stream. But why can't I see him? Because I know it if I saw it. Just give me one hot minute. Okay. I missed it somewhere. But yeah, again, really cool dudes. Everybody kind of with their own insight, where they've been in the industry, where they're going, what their passions are, and it was just great. Like I gleaned as much, and this is really where I'm at. I'm taking as much as I can from people that say like, "Hey, do this, don't do that," and I'm just gonna internalize all of it, and then throw it all out there and go, okay, when it's time, go, just make a battle plan and keep all these things in mind of what everyone I've met who's been there, and even people who haven't been there that just seem to have some insight about not only the industry but what people want. So 80s Made Consumer is like, well, I'm not a creator. He's working on some ideas and story wise, but he's like, almost downplays the importance of his opinions. And I'm like, dude, no, like the consumer. Oh yeah, it was Drew Williams. Comics with Drew is his channel. So yeah, he was very insightful as well, and it was just a really cool stream. So all of those people, great people, fun show, and I look forward to doing it again. So thank you again, 80s Made Consumer, for having me on and for just kind of taking me in and letting me be part of your channel. So that's been really awesome of you. Anyway, I'm going to stop this for now. I'm going to work on it a little more, but without having to yap. Yap. Enjoy my Boilermaker. You all have a wonderful evening. I hope everything is pure awesome for you tomorrow as you go about your day and the rest of your week. That you are mighty and powerful in everything you do, but humble as well, because that's important. All right, take care. This is Odin. See ya.